Hello guys, so welcome to JavaScript tutorial. We are going to learn about what is JavaScript. This course is designed for beginners. Without wasting any time, let's get started. What is JavaScript? JavaScript is a lightweight interpreted programming language. It is designed for creating network-centric applications, which means those applications only it is designed to create which requires communication between two channels. It is very easy to implement because it is integrated with HTML, so we can run this on browser. It is open source, means free, and cross-platform, means we can run this on Windows, Linux, Mac OS, etc. Why JavaScript? Fundamental reason is because it is most popular programming language in the world. So if you are a student or software developer, most chances for you to know the JavaScript should be very high. So we must learn JavaScript in those cases. It is everywhere, which means when we are running a program, the more chances are you are using JavaScript is very high. It helps to create beautiful and crazy fast websites. Since JavaScript codes runs on the machine and requires very less talk with the server, so it creates your website very dynamic, which makes it looks beautiful. And since there are less talk with server, it also makes your website very fast. It has very wide variety of uses. Even if you are using mobile development, application development, app development, JavaScript is used in all the places, and we can use JavaScript to create these applications. It supports tons of frameworks and library. So while writing your program, if you need any help, we can get a ready-made code and we can import those code and write our JavaScript program. So it can help our developers to solve various problems. Now for setting up a environment, we can use a text editor such as Notepad, Atom. In this case, in this tutorial, we will be using Visual Studio Code. To run JavaScript outside the browser, we need a environment. So in this case, we'll be using Node.js, and we can only use Node.js to run JavaScript outside the browser. So let's get started with our hands-on using browser. So here we can see browser, and to go to console, we can press F12 and select this console menu. We see here an arrow. We can write our code like console.log. Hi there. And press enter to run this. So we can see whatever we have written inside the double quotes is printed below. So using browser, we can actually execute JavaScript code like this. Now using HTML file. So let's jump into VS Code. So here we are on VS Code. To start with, we can go to File and create new file. It is asking to select a language, which should be HTML. Press enter. Here, to write a default HTML code, we can type HTML and we can see selections. We can go to HTML5 and it has generated the default code for us. Now we will write our code inside body. So we can type script, close this, and close the script tag. Within this, we will be writing our JavaScript code. So same program, console.log, we can write it like this. Let's save this file. I'll be saving this here on the desktop and name it as hi. I can see Google Chrome and this file is opened here. By pressing F12, I can see hi there is printed. So when I refresh this, hi there is printed. I can go back and change something like hi there Pawan. Come back here and see hi there Pawan. Now let's do one more thing. Along with typing in console, we can also get a pop-up like hi there. So when we go back and see in the browser, we get a pop-up hi there. So we can run our basic JavaScript code using HTML. Now using Node.js. To run codes in Node.js, we can download a Node.js from the website nodejs.org, and we can see there are multiple versions here, which is LTS and current. So LTS is long-term support, so we should download this versions only. We can download for Windows, Mac OS and Linux. When we are going for Windows installer, we can take 32 bits or 64 bits based on our system requirement. So once we download this, we can simply go and install Node.js and come back to Visual Studio Code. Here we can go to terminal and start a new terminal. When we start the terminal, we can check Node.js whether it is working or not by simply typing node and pressing enter. Now it is working for me, since it is showing the version of Node.js as some version. For you it may be different. Now we can write a code using Node.js. So let's create another file by selecting JavaScript. So now the same program, we can write it like console.log hi there, and we can save this as hi, not HTML but JavaScript. Alright, so we can navigate to this location and run this code as node space hi.js hi there. So we are able to run our code using Node.js as well. Now how to use a separate JS file inside HTML? To do this, we'll go back to Visual Studio Code. as we have written this file, we can remove this. We can come back here and we can add src is equal to hi.js and save this. Now coming back to hi, we can run this on browser, press F12 and we can see it is typed hi there. Now we can change something in hi.js like hi there Pawan, and we can refresh and check that it is working. So this is how we can use separate JS file to run our JS code in HTML. Now some tips on using VS Code. As we have already seen how to use terminal, I'll also show you autosave feature. In VS Code, as you can see, whenever I'm typing, I do not need to save it again and again. You can enable this in your VS Code by clicking on File and enable this autosave so that your changes will be saved automatically and you don't have to press Ctrl S again and again. Let's now go to next section. Things to remember. Placement of script. Where should we put JavaScript code in our HTML file? As we can see in this HTML file, our JavaScript code is written in body. We can also put this code and place it in head. The code will still be working perfectly fine. But the question is, what should be the recommendation of using this script tag? When you are writing this HTML page, the browser will load this page from top to bottom. So when you need a JavaScript, certain code in JavaScript that should be loaded, before loading your content of the page, we should mark this near to head or inside head tag. But when a code requires execution after loading the file, then we should put it inside body. The benefit of using inside body will be that your content in the page like CSS and other DOM object will not be compromised. The script will continue to load in your browser while your complete content has been loaded. So the end user who is viewing your page will not see any lag whenever there is a load in the browser. Now let's go to see how comments work. So this is our JavaScript code. We can use two types of comment. One is single line, which is double slash, and put this is our comment. So this part of the code will not be executed by JavaScript and we can write anything inside this. But this will only work for one line. If you start writing this is second comment, the particular code will not work. It will be considered as a code and you can see it is showed as red. To avoid this problem for multiple liners, we can use */. So whenever we have to start our comment, we can put just before the star hash, and whenever there is an end, we can end this */, and our comment will be there. Alright, with that we'll move to the next section. Variables. First we'll be understanding what is let, const and var. Coming back to our JavaScript code, we can use let for assigning any variables. What are variables? Variables are nothing but pointing a memory location. Suppose we want to put any value inside a memory location, we need to know what location actually it is. So we are just naming that location as a particular variable. So here a, or here name, which is the right name of the variable. So here name is a variable which can hold a particular value. So here Pawan is a value, name is a variable. Now same thing we can do as var. We can put var as your name and put anything, Amit. Similarly, we can put const and we can put another name and we can put here Rajesh. So all three, when we execute, like when we use console.log and type name comma name plus your name plus another name and check, we can see all three has been printed. So these three, let, var and const, can be used for assigning names. But the question is, what is the difference between name, your name and another name? Let's come back to hide.js. So here, if we see, we have a function name. Inside that, we have created a if condition which is having 1, so it will run always, which is true, and we have assigned our variable here. After doing that, we are simply doing console.log with name, your name and another name. Now let's try to execute this. We see that we are seeing hi there Pawan is, and after that we don't see any execution because we have to call name function. Okay, now again execute that and we can see another name is not defined and the const another name, it is not taking as defined, but we have defined inside it. So what is the problem here? We'll put the comment here and we'll try to re-execute this. Now we can see okay, and now we can see name and your name. So here we see everything is getting printed and finally the name Amit is only getting printed here. So what is happening here? Since name has a scope from here to here, we cannot print name, but we can print Amit because it is defined as var. So the scope of var is function and scope of let is the scope, which means from where it has been opened and closed. Now let and const are same. So when we define another name inside this, so the scope of another name is also starting this scope and starting this parenthesis and starting the braces and this braces. So when we run another name, this will become undefined because outside this block another name doesn't exist, but var exists since it is defined as var. Now let's look into the difference between undefined and null. Coming back to this program, suppose I have written let my program. So I have declared a variable and I'm going to print the value of it. When I do so, the value of my program is undefined, which means whenever we declare a variable and do not assign a value, it takes a value which is called undefined. But we can also assign undefined value inside any variable. So when we run this again, we can see undefined value is assigned to this variable. We can also, this is not a good practice. So if you don't want to assign any value, we can put it as null object. So when we do that, it will have a different value which is null instead of undefined. Undefined means there is no value. Null is an object. So good practice for writing a variable should be assigning the value as null instead of undefined. Naming convention. Our program, the variable that we use inside our program should not start with any letters, any numeral letters. As you can see, we cannot start with to my program. We should also not have any spaces between variables. So this is not a valid variable. There are certain keywords that is reserved and we should not use as a variable, like let, and we cannot use let var. Var is a keyword, so we cannot have assign any name as variable to a keyword. We should always write our variable using camel case. So the first letter of camel case should be small and next word start with capital. So as you can see in your name, Y start with small letter and ends with capital. So this is how a camel case looks like. Moving on to the next, types in JavaScript. So the first type is string type. As we can see here, let name is assigned to a value called Pawan. So Pawan is a string which is having a variable name as name. So we can use single quote or we can use double quote here. So both will do the same job, but we should use mostly single quote while declaring any name, any string value, because we can also use double quote inside single quote. So if we do console.log here, we can see double quotes is considered as a string. So it is always helpful if we use single quote to provide a value inside string. So these are our string values. Next is number. To define number, we use same approach of let num is equal to 5. So here the num is a variable which is assigned value as 5. We can also put let sum is equal to num plus 5 and we can console the value of sum. As we can see, the value of sum is 10 here. Boolean. Boolean values are stored as true or false. So suppose I have to ask whether a particular proposal is approved or not, we can say yes or no. So yes can be true or no can be false. So is approved can be either true or false. Please note that the values inside the boolean do not have quotes. So it is true without quotes. This is also a keyword, so we cannot use this as a variable name. Just let's check this. Sorry, yeah. And we can see is approved true is typed as true, which is not a string, it is a boolean. We have already talked about undefined and null, so we'll skip it here and we'll directly go to dynamic typing. Dynamic typing means we can change the type of the value inside the variable. Suppose here we have assigned num as 5. So now if we want to change the type of num, we can write it as num is equal to Pawan, and then we can do run this command and we can see Pawan 5. So now previously the num was having value as 5, which is now changed to Pawan because of dynamic typing. When we have defined a variable as an integer, we can very well go ahead and change the type of that variable as a string, and JavaScript will still work. It is not true with other programming languages like C or Java, where if we have defined a variable as a string, it will completely be string throughout the program. Moving on to reference type in JavaScript. So we have basically 3 reference type in JavaScript, which is object, arrays, and functions. Let's look into that one by one. So coming back here, we'll remove everything. Where my obj. So to have an object, it starts with curly braces and ends with curly braces. So my obj, this is the empty object that my obj points to. Now if we use console.log, we can see that the value inside my obj is empty object. Now if we want to put any value inside this, we can use name, and to assign a value inside it, we have to use colon and the value, which is Pawan. So for now so here it is, name Pawan. So this is how we can assign a value inside any variable inside object. Now we need to create an array. So where my array, to create an array we use bracket, and we can provide any value like 1, or let's write Sunday, Monday, etc. So if we type this my array, the execution should look like this. So here it is an array which is having Sunday, Monday, and whatever is assigned inside the my array. An important thing here to note that If we are here we are using where, it will also work with let, and we should actually use let instead of where. And one more thing, when we are using const instead of my object and my array, basically const will not allow my object to change its value. Generally, for other operation like const name is equal to Pawan, and if I'm trying to change the name of Pawan to Rajesh, basically it will not allow us to do that. Assignment to a constant variable is not allowed, so we cannot assign a value to const when it is already assigned that value. But let's try use, suppose for my array we have a function called push. So I'm just going to push a value inside this, like Tuesday. So when I will try to type the value, it is working, it is allowing us to add a value as Tuesday. So funda here is, when we assign a constant to array or an object, it will change its value, it is not mutated. But when we are trying to change the value of string or a number, that gets mutated when it is a constant. So constant values will not be applicable for my object and my array unless and until explicitly we are defining it for mutation. We have covered object and arrays. Now let's talk about functions. So this is our function name. So when we write a function, we use a keyword called function, provide the name of the function, opening parenthesis and closing parenthesis, and braces. To call this function, we have to call a function by function name, like this. A function can also be written to return a value. So when we call this function, and print this value, we can see that value of this one is printed. So a function can perform operation, or function can do calculation and return its value. Moving on to the next topic, which is JSON. So let's talk about JSON, array, object, and hands-on inside JSON using JavaScript. Alright, so starting with JSON, we've created a new file and the language is JSON. So JSON is a JavaScript object notation which can have two type of value, which is object and arrays. So object is represented by braces, and we can have any key value pair. So name, Pawan. So this is our basic JSON structure. This can also have array. So we can write it as, suppose days. Inside that we can write Monday, Tuesday, and everything should go inside double quotes. We can also write and every key value pair should be separated by comma. We can also write integer in JSON like this, We can also use boolean like this. Sorry, like this. Right, this is our basic JSON structure. Now we can go ahead and save it as my JSON.json. So this is our JSON structure. Let's come here and see this, create the this JSON structure using JS file. So we will clean this up. We'll clean this up as well. Alright. So our first JSON, as we can see here, is name Pawan. So we'll put let my JSON is equal to, this is an object, and name as Pawan, comma, second JSON structure, days, interest, and is approved. So we can put days, and it is an array. So in JS we can use array like this. And now we can put next is approved as true, and next part like interest as 5. And when we print this value, we can see here the JSON structure is printed. Now suppose we want to change value inside this. Suppose we want to change the name of this structure. So what we are going to do, we are going to use a dot operator. So we can use like this, my JSON we can is equal to my JSON dot this name value and my JSON dot name, whose value we have to change. We can write it as Rajesh, and then we can check our JSON. Now it is no more name is equal to Pawan, it is name is equal to Rajesh. Suppose we want to add one more days inside this array. So we can do like this, my JSON dot days dot add one more value, which is push as Wednesday, and check the value. It is Sunday, Monday, Wednesday. Now we want to change the value of is approved. So we can use my JSON dot is approved is equal to false. And we can come back and check this. This is false. Similarly, we can change the value of interest as well. Right. So this is how we can modify any JSON. We can write a JSON with object, arrays. The same thing we can achieve using JS, and we can do manipulation of JSON in array using dot operator, and we can add values inside it. So with that, we have completed our basic training of JavaScript, and we have learned what is JavaScript. We have also seen setting up the environment for JavaScript by downloading node.js and VS Code. We have seen the separation of concern, how we can use a separate JS file, variables, different type of variables, types that we have seen, dynamic typing, we can change the type inside the JavaScript, like string value can also be changed to integer. Reference type, we have gone through object, arrays and function. We've also seen types of function, and finally we use JSON separately as well as inside the JavaScript. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you. We'll meet in the next video.